Hey folks, it's Dr. H, your friendly ACSE Wargame Director. I'm putting this video together in response to a request to have videos that show how certain things are done in Next War. Glad to do it. This video is being done on a fairly improvised and expedient basis, so I ask you to forgive any lapses in quality, background noise, etc. I'm filming this using screen capture on my computer using a program called Vassal. Vassal is a cyberboard program. I can talk more about Vassal if you want, but for now, it's a good way to display the information that we want to display, the pieces we want to display, so that I can do this demonstration for you. To give you a quick orientation, we're using Next War Poland. One of the limitations of Vassal as it stands now is that the pieces aren't always the same everywhere. This is one of the modules that has the best SAM pieces in it. So it's one of the reasons we're using Poland for this. And this is the operational map that you've all know and love. Just to give you a quick orientation as to what is on the operational map here. We've got this headquarters here in Warsaw. That's going to be the overall target for the Russian air offensive here. We've got a Patriot air defense system here. And we've got, we're picking things up kind of in the middle of business. The Russians have already struck this airbase, so I can demonstrate a particular way a rule works for you. Now, just to give you an idea of how the SAM battery works, you'll see this more in depth later. But the 9 here, the first number here on the battery is 9. That's its detection value. 8 is its SAM value, and 5 in the hex-looking thing is its range in hexes. So this covers 5 hexes away. So it covers this airbase, it covers this airbase, it also covers this headquarter, it covers all of the hexes of Warsaw, and actually extends out a pretty good distance over the bug and all of these sort of cities near Warsaw. Also, I'm probably going to mispronounce all the Polish names, so if the Polish IO sees this, please come teach me rather than beat me about the head and neck. I probably deserve the beating, but I'd rather learn. So, that's the operational map. We also have a strategic display. The strategic display in Next War Poland is similar to that in Next War, in the other Next War games that we're going to use, but still worth orienting to you. So, these tracks here and these tracks down here represent the various possible stages that an aircraft can be in. Ready means it's ready to be used. Flown means it's gone for this turn. Aborted means it suffered some sort of ill result as a result of combat. But this helps you keep track of where everything is. You can see that these are aligned to places. So this is aligned to Russia, which means it's aligned to which means that the aircraft are based at the Russian holding box up here. So this is the airbase symbol. It's a, jet-looking plane and a dot in the color of the country. So these air bases are in Russia somewhere. It's not important where. These planes are based at bases in Russia somewhere. We're not going to try to keep track of each plane at each base. That's a major headache. As you can see, the Russian forces have a couple of bombers. We've got a Bear. We've got a Backfire. We've got 2 Sukhoi 24 fencers. We've got 2 of these Sukhoi 30 advanced flankers. We have 1 Sukhoi 24 just regular flavor flanker and 1 MiG-29 Fulcrum. If we come down to NATO, we'll see that we've got guys based in Poland. There's no Poland box, right? There's a NATO track, there's a NATO holding box, there's no Poland box. That's because the airfields that are in Poland are actually on the physical map up here, right? So if I want to attack the air bases for the planes on the Poland track, I go and I fly missions against the Poland bases on the map. We also have some tracks representing aircraft carriers. And then we have this track for the United States Guam that represents really, really distant bases for the United States. They're very far away. And then we have an F-35 here, an F-22. We have a Strike Eagle, and we have an F-16. So these are the planes that are in Poland. Over in the United States, we've got everybody's friend, Grandpa Buff, ready to fly missions. A group of B-52s, we'll talk about why that's working out that way in just a second. Let's talk about range really quickly. Range and how to read the pieces. Okay, so we've got an F-35 here. So we start up here, AS. So planes that have an A in that corner are all weather. They are less affected by weather conditions. Not unaffected, less affected. If you don't have the A there and it's storming, your plane doesn't fly. The S means it's stealthy. So you'll notice that, here we go, F-35 is stealthy, but the F-16 is not stealthy. That should be obvious from real life. These ranges up here are noted by a letter. So S is short, M is medium, L is long, U is unlimited. For this map, planes that want to fly between Russia and NATO, and the Russia box and the NATO holding box have to be long range, right? So if we come here and I drag this over, actually, let me just zoom out. There we go. So you can read here, only long and unlimited range airstrikes and theater weapons can attack this box, right? According to game-specific rules. So if the Russians want to attack it, they have to use long-range planes. So that means we come up here, and these fences are just right out. They don't have the range to get there. So we have in between these two sides the air superiority missions box. When it's time for air superiority missions, we'll put those in those boxes. We've got this track with a bunch of numbers. This is the general records turn track, and you have specific markers that you can place on the track to help you keep track of things. So you can see the Russians have 2 cruise missiles. The United States has 1 cruise missile. There are a bunch of things to track on here. Those are the only things we're going to track for this demonstration. I've also placed this S-400 marker here by the Russia holding box. Every airbase in Russia has an S-400 next to it. All of these atom-looking things, the nuclear weapon sites, they also have S-400s next to them. There are just sort of an unlimited number of S-400s in Russia to defend these things, in order to protect these bases. That would be true of NATO if we were going to use the NATO bases, but we're not going to do that today for purposes of this demonstration. We come down here, we can see that there is an air superiority level, right? So the current air superiority level from last turn, NATO advantage, that's great. The weather track over here, weather for this is going to be overcast. We're just going to declare that in order to show how those rules work. We have a spot to mark the initiative. Who has the initiative? It's NATO. We have a spot to mark the season. Excellent. We have the AWACS advantage track. This is very important for when it comes to air superiority combat. Knowing who has the AWACS advantage is going to make a difference. Here we can see the AWACS advantage is NATO 2. So I'll show you how that plays out in a second. The submarine and ACV thread marker, that uses the naval rules. We're not there yet. And then down here we have this air defense track. We will never use the air defense track. We're using SAM markers, and those obviate those make those rules obviated. That means we'll never use that track. But if you see it and you wonder what it is, that's what it is. There's other stuff over here. We can talk about all of that happy stuff later when the time comes. So this is the strategic display. That's the operational display. Now, I'm going to start working through a turn so that you can see how a turn works, which means that I've got some charts up here. They may not be the easiest thing in the world to read. I recommend having your charts handy so that you can look through the charts, having copies of the charts handy, so you can look through the charts as we go along. Keep in mind, that's one way that you can sort of practice, get some reps of actually doing this as you follow along, as we try to do these things. You'll get more value out of this video that way. Remember, you can always pause the video. If you've got me on like 1.5 or 2 times speed, you're not going to catch what you're going to need to catch. So I recommend going slower rather than faster when it comes to this sort of thing. I'll show you the charts. I'll work through the charts here on the screen, but it's better if you bring the charts with you. Remember, you can always pause. You can always rewind if you need to hear something again as you grab a few practice reps with this. Cool. All right, so let's go to our sequence of play. So weather phase, we've already determined the weather. It's overcast. This is a practice game. This is a practice turn, so we've already determined that. Initiative phase, NATO's got it. Electronic detection phase, we're not doing that for this game. We're not doing the special forces phase. Okay, so we go to the air naval phase. And we're going to do the air superiority sortie step. Step 1 is to count the number of air bases with strike markers remaining that are not under repair. The owning player must move half that number, rounded down, minimum number of 1, air units to the flown box from air units based in the associated basing box. Okay, well, there's a strike marker here on one Polish base. There are no other strike markers on any Polish bases. So 1 divided by 2 is 1/2, but minimum of 1. Right, so that means NATO has to move one of its planes down to the flown box. And we're going to move the Viper. So, right, damaging air bases affects the ability for you to sortie things. We're not going to, NATO is going to sortie 1 less aircraft as a result of this. Count the number of airfields and bases that were captured or destroyed in the previous turn. In this turn's first off phase. We didn't have anything destroyed in the previous turn. We just had that 1 strike marker sitting there, so we don't have to move any other ones. But note that if you strike bases and also destroy bases in the previous turn, you get, this is a double whammy, right? So destroying bases and striking bases, you can get more effect that way. Reset everybody's destroyed capture this turn markers to 0. Already done. Both players place air units in the air superiority box. Now the way that units get placed in the air superiority box is the side without the AOX advantage has to place first, and the side with the AOX advantage places second. If nobody has the AOX advantage, everybody's gonna like hold them in their little hands and then show simultaneously what they're doing. So the Russians have to go first. Let's come up here and take a look at our planes. Let's go ahead and orient ourselves to the planes, right? So we've got, like I said just a second ago, we've got A, we've got S, right? We've talked about range. So let's talk about the numbers at the bottom, right? The numbers at the bottom, the first number is the air-to-air value. With some of these have asterisks with them, right? More asterisks is good. So some of these guys have 1 asterisk. So these guys down here have 2. That's the phase in which you fight in air-to-air combat. The more asterisks, the more phases. We'll get into that in more detail in a second here. The second number is its close support value. So that's if it's supporting ground combat, the modifier it would give to that combat. So if we flew this, if we flew this fencer in and got it to support ground combat, it would give either +2 or -2 depending on which side it was on, the attacker or the defender. The last number here is the strike value, right? That's we'll show that in far more detail when it comes down to it. And things with asterisks after it have standoff weapons, meaning they don't get affected by AAA fire. So you really want to strike with things that have asterisks. You'll notice that the bear up here has this double asterisk. It can only carry cruise missiles. It doesn't do any bombing on its own. So that's your quick look at the airplanes. This is in the rules, so there's other references to it. So if you need another look at it, don't worry about it. Okay, so I want to put guys in the air superiority. So this flanker has only air-to-air values, so it's going in the air superiority. This guy has very bad strike values and a good air-to-air value, so the flanker's going to go in. These fencers have bad air-to-air values. They're not going to strike. You'll notice that the bombers have their air-to-air values in parentheses, meaning they don't do any shooting in air-to-air combat, which doesn't help anyone. So they're just targets in air-to-air combat. They're definitely not going in the air superiority box. And that leaves this question of what do I do? Because these guys are both good strikers and good at air-to-air. So let's see. I know I want to hit the headquarters unit. I'm going to need at least a couple of strikers, but I also want to still try to hit an airbase. So I'm going to keep one of these guys back. I'm going to send one of them forward. Cool. So I, as NATO, can see what's going on here. I have an idea of what's going on. They've got 3 guys up there. I've got 3 available guys, so I'm going to send 3 of my guys up. All of my planes go. Now remember, Viper's in the flown box. He doesn't get to fly today because the Russians damaged our air bases earlier. So, air superiority allocation's done. Next thing is the air superiority combat resolution step. That starts with pairing things up. So we come down here. We can see that NATO has the AOX advantage of 2. So they're going to do the first pairing and they're going to pair 2. So I'm going to take this flanker and I'm going to send the F-22 against it. Right? My best against their best. And then I've got this improved flanker. I'm going to send my next best against it, the F-35. Now that really only leaves one set of planes, right? We've got the Fulcrum against the Mudhen. Right? The Russians get to pick one. That's the only one they get to pick. Now if I had more to pick, right? NATO had AWACS advantage of 2. They picked 2. Russia's picked 1. If there were more to pick, NATO would then pick. Right? They would continue to pick 2. The Russians won because they have AWACS advantage of 2. If they had AWACS advantage of 3, they would pick 3. If they had AWACS advantage of 1, they would just pick 1. If they had AWACS advantage of 4, they'd pick 4. That's all fine. Also, if we've paired up and there are and one side has excess planes, they have a choice. They can either double up, or they can double up, or they can just leave it alone. Right? There are advantages and disadvantages to both. If it's a good fighter, doubling up increases the chance that you'll shoot down the enemy. If it's not a very good fighter, when we do air superiority, what matters is the number of pieces in the air superiority boxes, not how good they are. So if you've got that DPRK MiG-19 just doing circles somewhere over the DPRK, it counts as much as the F-22 for purposes of determining overall air superiority. So you probably don't want to send him in there and just get shot down, right? So we've made our allocations here. Actually, let me show you that. Let's do that hypothetical. I think I've got the plans for it. No, I don't. We're gonna stay like that, right? I've made choices. So how do we do air-to-air combat? Well, we're going to take these pairings and we're going to step through. Now, let me come to air combat and strike. So we're going to find our advanced air combat table that's going to tell us how to do things. Now, what matters is the first number, and what matters is the asterisks. Air-to-air combat goes in long range, standoff, dogfight. Right? So we're going to go in 3 steps. In order for each asterisk, you get to fight in 1 additional step past dogfight. So if you've got 1 asterisk, you fight in standoff. If you've got 2 asterisks, you fight in long range. If you have no asterisks, you can only dogfight. The other guy can shoot in all the phases he's eligible for. You shoot in every phase you're eligible for, unless you are disadvantaged. If we get to disadvantage, we'll talk about it. Now, that said, there are a couple of other nuances to consider, right? One is stealthy. If you are a stealthy plane, you may only target it in the dogfight. That's the only spot that's the only spot you can be fought in. So stealthy planes have an inherent advantage. And like I said, guys who can shoot further have an inherent advantage against guys who can't. Should be pretty obvious. Now, let's talk about how to do air to combat. Now remember, everybody's eligible to shoot in a phase gets to shoot in a phase. So let's start with this pairing here, right? We've got the advanced Fulcrum against the F-35. Now, the F-35 has 2 asterisks, so it can shoot in long range. The Sukhoi 30 has only 1 asterisk, so it can't shoot in long range. The way that we resolve this is we're going to go ahead. So what you do is you take your number and you subtract the enemy's air-to-air number. So my air-to-air number here at the F-35 is 4. The flankers is 5. 4 minus 5 is -1. So I'm going to be rolling over here on the -1 column of this chart. So I roll the die. Actually, move this down so I can read the die. I roll the die. Die is 3, and I do my modifiers. Strike or CS aircraft? No. Storm? No. So, no modifier there. 3, and I read over to -1. AD/D. Okay, cool. So, that means that in the next step, the F-35 is going to have advantage, right? So if we read over here, we can see what the results are. We read versus area units. AD applies instead of D result during long range or standoff attack. This result gives the firing unit advantage, the first shot. So, as we go into the standoff, the Sukhoi 35 is eligible to shoot in standoff, but the F-35 is stealthy, so it can't see it. Also, even if it, even if it could see it, the F-35 would still get to shoot first because it has advantage. Okay, so let's roll it again. And we come over here, we can look at our modifiers. Attack versus bomber, no. Non-NATO, Japan retribute, no. Strike and storm, still no. Okay, so we rolled the die. Boom, I rolled another 3. What do you know?
Guess we're rolling 3s today. So 3 advantage. So we go into the dogfight where the Sukhoi 30 can actually fight the F-35, but it's disadvantaged. The F-35 has advantage. So the F-35 is going to shoot, and then the flanker shoots. Normally they would shoot simultaneously because they both can shoot in this phase. But because of the advantage, the F-35 gets to go. Okay. So we can come over here. We can see that we've only added one new modifier, and that is pilot skill. The pilot skill of the F-35 is -2. So we roll the die, and we're going to subtract 2. And I rolled another 3. Life in the fast lane. Okay, so 3 minus 2 is 1. I read over to the -1, and we can see A. I read A. A means aborted, right? So this flanker has been aborted. It is going to go down to the aborted box here. It is finished for the day. The F-35 wins. Now, remember, if the F-35 didn't have advantage, the Sukhoi would still get to shoot, right? Because its shooting is simultaneous. Okay, let's go to this one here. We've got this flanker against the F-22. Similar conditions, right? The F-22 can shoot at long range. It is a 6. The flanker is a 5, so 6 minus 5 is +1. We're going to roll the F-22 on the +1 column. We know that there are really no modifiers for this, so 4 on the +1 is A, aborted. The flanker goes home. And that's the end of that combat. We're not going to do standoff. We're not going to do dogfight. Combat's over. Nothing to do. Okay, so let's take a look at this one, right? The F-15 versus the Fulcrum. So, neither of these can shoot in long range. Neither of them have the asterisks to do that. Both of them are 4s. Neither of them are stealth. So they're going to both shoot in the standoff. 4 minus 4 is 0. Not to insult anyone's intelligence. So we're both going to roll on this 0 chart here. In the standoff, again, no modifiers apply. We've been through them. So we'll roll for the F-15. He rolled an 8. A 6. And the Fulcrum rolls a 5. So 6 on the 0 is nothing. 5 is AD/D. So that means that the Fulcrum has the advantage. He'll shoot first in the dogfight. So we go to dogfight. Fulcrum shoots first. We know we're rolling on the 0. We know that pilot skill is the only thing that's going to matter. So we roll a die. We subtract a 1. So 5 minus 1 is 4. And that gives us an AD/D result again. Now, advantage only applies in long range and standoff. There's no phase after the dogfight. So instead we apply the D result. The D result is target is damaged, 1 step loss. So we're going to go ahead and damage the Strike Eagles. Now note that what did we get last time? We got it sorry, I have to remind myself what actually happened here. Right, so the Fulcrum had the advantage, so now we're going to recompute for the F-15. So 2 minus 4 is +2. Correction. Yeah, 2 minus 4 is -2. So we're going to actually roll on this chart over here. We've changed the skill value, so it's -1 now for the F-15. And he rolls a 7. 7 minus 1 is 6. That's not going to do anything. But nobody aborted, so they're both here. Now we have to compute air superiority. Let's come down here. We'll see that we want to see these ratios, right? That's the ratio of pieces, not the ratio of factors. So there's 3 blue pieces and 1 red piece. Blue has 3 to 1. So 3 to 1, but less than 5 to 1 is superiority. Blue has superiority, so we're going to put the marker in superiority. And you'll read here, AWAC shift +1. So the AWACS advantage is now blue 3. Good times. All right. So let's go back to our sequence of play. Right? Determine the subject's superiority level. Did that. Both sides determine automatic detection ranges. Done. Update AWACS advantage. Done. The rest of this stuff is Navy stuff. We're not going to do it. Special operations forces phase. We don't have any. Okay, strike phase. Both sides may conduct strikes. Alternating. Non-allied first. Allocate nuclear weapons. Yeah, we don't have any nuclear weapons. Both players allocate all missile and cruise missile strikes, then resolve non-allied first. Okay, so
Russia has 2 cruise missiles. Those cruise missiles have to be carried on bombers. The bombers that I have are this Bear and this Backfire. So they're going to conduct 2 cruise missile attacks. So I decrement my cruise missiles by 2 down to 1. And let me close this up for a second. And I do this as technique. You don't have to do it, but just to sort of remind myself what's going on as I allocate, right? I'm going to take the Backfire and the Bear and kind of put them down here by the target, which is the Patriot battery. Now, the cruise missiles are making the attack. The bombers are not in danger. The bombers launch way outside of the Patriots' range, and the cruise missiles are going to make the attack. This is just to remind me what's going on. Okay, cool. Now, the U.S. has a cruise missile attack. They're going to use Grandpa Buff. Grandpa Buff has unlimited range, and he is going to go and he's going to attack an airbase over in Russia with cruise missiles. Remember, bomber's not at risk. So he can go and attack Russian airbases with cruise missiles without facing S-400 fire. The cruise missile takes the fire. Okay, excellent. So we have allocated them, and the next step is going to be to resolve them. So let's see. Then resolve non-allied first. So we've got 2 cruise missiles going against that Patriot battery. We'll do the first cruise missile and then the second cruise missile. So we want to call up our first thing, detection and air defense fire chart. Now, both of these bombers, they've made their cruise missile attacks. We can go ahead and slide these guys to the flown box. Right, they have flown their mission. We know that there are 2 cruise missiles going. Okay. So, let's do detection on these cruise missile attacks. Now, they're shooting at the Patriot battery. The Patriot battery is in fact in range of a SAM battery. So, we've got a detection value of 9 on the Patriot. So we're going to roll on this 9 column over here, which is great. So let's check our modifiers. Target landing axis with the 2 X's are the same land areas of attacking plays HQ. No. Attack helicopter pass through. No. It's not an attack helicopter. Against attack helicopter. No. Against transport, if transport mission is, no, we're not landing or picking anything up. Wild Weasel included in the mission? No. Transport, paradrop support mission? No. Mission hex and the mountain hex? No. Overcast? Yes, +1. Versus cruise missile? +2. So, correction, +1, which makes it a total of +2. It's not a storm, and the mission is not composed entirely of stealth units. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and roll our detection. Remember, we're +2. So I rolled a 6. That becomes an 8. 8 on a detection value of 9 is D. So we detected the first cruise missile. And then 9 + 2 is 11. We don't detect the second one. Second one gets right past the radar. Okay, cool. I keep saying that. It's probably going to get annoying in a minute. So I come down here to my air defense fire chart to determine what's going to happen. Now, the first cruise missile goes straight through. There's no air defense. There's only air defense for the first one. So I've got to determine my SAM value. My SAM value here, second number on the marker, is 8. So my SAM value is 8. DRMs for Sandfire. Target landing hex with the 2 X? No. Versus attack helicopter? No. Overcast? Yes. Versus cruise missile? Yes. Per Wild Weasel, that is part of the strike? No. Storm? No. Stealth unit. It's actually very similar to the detection modifiers. So, I roll a 4. No modifiers, so I get +2. So one of the cruise missile attacks is going to go in. The other one's going to carry a +2 modifier over to the strike table. So let's talk about the strike table. On the strike table, right, I've got flat. We're here on flat. And we're going to read over to what we're using. We're using cruise missiles, so it's going to use this column over here. Good times. So we have one cruise missile that's coming in with nothing and one cruise missile that's coming with +2. So we'll go through our strike DRMs. Target hex is overstacked? No. High mountain? No. Targeted, no. Russian artillery, no. Pilot skill, note in this case, pilot skill means the skill of the pilot of the plane. These are cruise missiles. There's no pilot skill. SAM AAA result, so one of them is 0, one of them is +2. It's not a Wild Weasel strike from a Sea Cobra. Non-US cruise missile strike +1, so one of them is +1, the other one's +3. Striking HQs reduced strength, no. Ground unit in a city, no. Bridge or beachhead, no. Unit was engaged by interceptors, no. That didn't happen either. Theater weapon busting strike mission, no. For all airstrikes in overcast weather, no. This is a cruise missile strike. We have Growler from the North Sea, no. AAA track, no. Attacking strikes in a storm turn, no. Standoff versus Lig mobility class unit, no. So one of these guys is +1 for being a Russian cruise missile. The other one is +3. So I roll 1. That is an 8 plus 1 is 9. That's not going to do anything. And I roll the other one, which is a 5 plus 3 is 8. That also does nothing. So these cruise missiles did nothing. SAM battery's fine. Excellent. So let's go up here to Grandpa Buff. Grandpa Buff is going to launch a cruise missile against this Russian airbase. Remember, all Russian air bases have S-400s. One of the limitations of Vassal is that it's using a different S-400 counter. So I'm just going to tell you that its detection value is 8 and its SAM value is 8. We'll show them. You can go look at the markers we've given you if you want to know more. But that's what it is. Okay, Grandpa Buff launches his cruise missile. Now, Grandpa Buff launches his cruise missile. He goes back to the United States. He is actually going to go to the recovery box because there's an extra step for guys flying that long distance. All right, so cruise missile. We're going to go to first the detection. Remember, the detection value for an S-400 is 8. We've been through, let's see, overcast cruise missile +1/+1. AWACS advantage, that only applies to that as the AWACS advantage, meaning I should have applied it to NATO, but it wouldn't have made a difference if we go back and if you go rewind and read the numbers, you'll see it wouldn't have made a difference. But their AWACS advantage should have given them a -2. One of them, it wouldn't have changed the detection because that was all the way up to 11. -2 is 9, which is still not detected on the 8. Correction, on the 9. Okay, so we know we're +2 here. We're going to roll the die. 2 plus 2 is 4. That goes to 8. That is detected. So we've detected the cruise missile. SAM value is 8. We check everything. Overcast cruise missile +2 again. We roll the die. That comes up 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 on SAM value 8 is +1. This cruise missile is going to carry a +1 over to the strike table. Now, in the holding box, it says right here, treat as Rough Woods hex. So we're going to come here to Rough Woods, cruise missile. It's still the same column as flat. We're carrying a +1. Let's come through here. Remember, no pilot skill. +1 for SAM AAA result. It is a U.S. cruise missile, so we're going to have to take that +1. All these other ones don't apply. So we've got +1 against 2. So 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 on cruise missile is strike 2. So we've struck successfully, and we've put a strike 2 marker. So we're going to come up here to our strike markers, and we're going to go find a special one, the collateral damage strike 2 marker, because we're going to have to roll for collateral damage when we hit air bases. We had to roll for collateral damage. Note, when we say collateral damage, we don't mean the doctrinal term collateral damage in the game. The game term collateral damage means planes that might have also gotten hit at an airbase when it was struck. Not that we blew up some civilian bases, some civilian houses we didn't intend to blow up. Separate meanings in this case. So, we have, we placed our collateral damage strike 2 markers as a result. These can accumulate over the turn. If I bomb the same airbase several times, that's why we're going to save it, and we're going to replace it eventually when the time comes. Okay, cool. So, we've done missile strikes. Non-allied allocates airstrikes, helicopter strikes, and escorts. All right, so I am going to now fly two sets of strikes. We're going to fly our fencers here in a package to go at this headquarters, and we're going to fly this advanced fulcrum against an airbase. Now, to form a package, you can have 1 or 2 strikers and up to 2 escorts. The strikers come from the ready box. The escorts come from the air superiority box. So we're going to, and again, I like to kind of just build my package near my target just so I can remember these things. So we're going to send these two fencers in as strikers. This fulcrum is in the air superiority box. He's going to escort them in. This guy up here, this advanced flanker, is going to go against an air base, is going to go against the same air base that was struck earlier. He's going to go alone and unafraid because there are no SAMs up there. So AAA fire is much reduced. If I look here, right, blue has no forces in any ready boxes. So it cannot conduct any airstrikes. So there's nothing for the allies to allocate for these strikes. So non-allied attempts detection of wild weasel strikes. There aren't any of those, and they may attack anything it overtakes with interceptors. Allies resolve wild weasel strikes, including ADF. Non-allied attempts detected of all other allied strikes. There are no other allied strikes. And then may right. So allies resolve strikes, not doing that. So allies attempt detection of all non-allied strikes. So we've got 2 strikes here, right? Let's do this guy up here. Let's do this guy up at the attacking this airbase. He's the simpler case. Question 1: Is there an airbase? Is there a SAM within range? 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope. Just did it to prove it to myself. It didn't work. So yeah, there's no SAM defending this base. So that means we actually use a column on the chart called local, right? We're relying on whatever's there locally. A very generic sense of what's going, a very generic sort of air defense. So let's come up here to my detection. You can see local, not great. Our modifiers, the only one that I can see here that applies is going to be the overcast, right? Nobody's stealth here. It's not storm. It's not a cruise missile. So we're going to roll on the local column with a +1. Let me close that up so I can see what I'm doing. Close. We've got 2 + 1 is 3, and unfortunately that gives us no result. So this strike doesn't get shot at, doesn't get intercepted. We go straight to the strike table. So strike table. Our target is in Flatwoods because that's where that base is. It's in Flatwoods, and now we read over and we find our strike value. Our strike value on this piece. Let me zoom in on that a little bit so it's easier to read. Our strike value on this piece is 4 with an asterisk. So the asterisk means it ignores AAA fire. We read over to 4, right? So that means we're going to be on this column here. That's what we have for modifiers. It's not overstacked, not a high mountain, not targeted, not Russian artillery. Pilot skill is -1. SAM AAA result, we didn't have one. Wild weasel strike, no. Not a non-US cruise missile. Striking HQ, no. Ground unit, no. Bridge versus Bridger B said no. Unit was engaged by interceptors? No, it wasn't actually. Theater busting weapon strike, no. All airstrikes in overcast weather, so +2, so we're at a total of +1. It's not a growler. It's not against the MAAA track. It's not a storm turn. Okay, so we're not trying to blow up a leg unit. So +1 total on this roll. We roll the die. It is a 9. 9 + 1 is 10. No effect. I'm not even going to look at the chart. I just know. So we come over here. We're going to move this away. And this guy comes here and he goes to the flown box. He's missed. All right. Let's do this package down here. It's a little more complicated. Remember, 2 fencers as strikers. We have the the fulcrum here is escort. They are flying against this target. Is it within range of a SAM? Yeah, it's in range of the SAM battery. Its detection value is 9. So we're going to start here on detection. Now we know it's overcast, so +1. We remember that. It's not a cruise missile. It's not solely stealth units. And this time we're going to remember the AOX advantage, which is 3, so it's -2. So that becomes a -1 to detect. The whole package, we only roll to detect the package. And we roll a 6. 6 - 1 is 5. And that is going to be D. I want to show you guys something, and this is going to be my last opportunity. So let's pretend that we rolled actually a 4. 4 - 1 is 3. Early detected. Early detected means now I can commit interceptors as the side that's detecting. So I'm going to pull down my interceptors. I can pull down 1 or 2 of my pieces from the air superiority box to intercept this. And I'm going to intercept these with an F-22 and an F-35. So we're going to do this both ways. We're going to do this we're going to show you how the interceptors work, then we're going to reset, and we're going to do it just with SAM fire, so we can see both sides of how this works. Okay, so now we have air-to-air combat. Right, so we've got the F-22 and the F-35 against the Fulcrum. That's not fair at all. So both of these guys can shoot in long range. So I'm going to call up my charts. No, my charts. Close that up. And I'm going to go to my air combat strike table, air combat table. So long range fire, we know no modifiers apply. We start 6 minus 4 is 2, so the F-22 rolls on the +2. Rolls a 3, no modifier on +2 is DA. Okay, so that would mean this guy would be damaged. Let's see, reduce. He's damaged and he's aborted. Now, the F-22, the blue has cleared out the escort, so now I can go and engage the fighters. The attack planes. Not going to be a great day to be a fencer pilot either. So we've got 2 of them. We're going to pair them up. One F-22 against one fencer. The F-35 against the other fencer. So we're going to come over here to our... So the F-22 can fire in long range. Yes, the fencer cannot. Also, it's stealthy. So 6 minus 1 is 5. The max number I can get is +4. We have already decided that we've already determined that nothing applies to long range in terms of numbers. 7 is an A. This guy is aborted, or would be aborted. I'm going to show you both cases here. And then the F-35 is going to roll on the +3 chart, and he rolls a 6. 6 on the +3 chart is advantaged. So the F-35 would get to shoot first if the fencer could shoot at all in the long range. It can't. So we're going to roll again in the long range. Remember, currently have no modifiers. 0 on the +3 is X. This whole fencer unit is now shot down. Okay, that's how interception works, just so you know. Remember, any escorts go up, you pull your escorts from the air superiority missions, you pull your bombers from the attack, from the ready boxes. If you get early detection, you can use interceptors. Interceptors fight the escorts. If the escorts are driven off at the end of all 3 rounds of combat, the escorts have been driven off. The interceptors can attack the plane, can attack the strikers. But if the escort survives all the way to the dogfight, that's it. It's done its job. Now, let's do this strike as if we had not been able to use interceptors as blue, just to show you how that works. Okay, so we have both of these guys coming in. They were detected, so let's come over here to our AAA fire. So we're going to do this again, remember, but as if they were not intercepted successfully, right? The SAM battery did not detect them successfully and intercept them. So both of these guys are coming in, and we're over here, SAM fire. So let me pull this up so it's easier to see. We've got ourselves some SAM fire. Target hex, no. Attack helicopter, no. Overcast, yes, +1. Not against a cruise missile. No wild weasel. Not against a stealth unit. So +1 on our roll. So remember, SAM value is the second number. So our SAM value is 8. 8. We roll 7 + 1 is 8. Read that over on the SAM 8 chart. So nothing for the first one. We roll again against the second one. 2 + 1 is 3 on the SAM 8 chart is A. A is, we come down here and we read our result. A is a little complicated, right? The mission is returned to its starting hex. No, it's actually, we went this one. Attack unit aborts mission. Owning player may attempt to press on with the mission. Roll a die. So we have a choice. We can either abort the fencer, nothing happens, or we can press and something bad may happen. Let's press to see what happens. So we roll the die. 3. 0 to 3. Step loss. If we had rolled a 5 to 9, it would be a +2, like getting the +2 result. Okay, so this guy, in fact, gets damaged going in. Okay, cool. So, we know that this guy gets +1. That guy's now damaged. He's less effective. All right, so these guys have gotten past the sand battery. They're going to conduct this strike here. So we're going to go to our strike table. So let's do the damaged guy first. He has a strike value of 2. The target is an urban. So we read over to the 2. That's this column, sad trombone. So target hex, no. Pilot skill is going to matter. +1. We're doing worse. Just kind of a flip through these things. I don't see anything that applies. So we're going to roll the die. +1, 0. Good roll. +1 is 1. So this guy hits. He does a strike. He puts strike 1 on his target. It's not enough to kill it, but we're making some progress. Okay. This guy over here is going to attack. So urban. And we read over to the 4 column. We know it's going to have +1 from the SAM result, -1 for pilot skill. So this is just going to be straight up. And he rolls a 9. That's a miss. So these guys are now done with their mission. They go back to the flown box. And we are done with the strike phase, right? We've done all of our strikes. Because really there's nothing left to fly, frankly. All right, let me go to my sequence of play. It will have some reminders for me, I'm sure. All right, sequence of play, strike phase. We've resolved all of our strikes. We've no naval compartment. Okay, roll for collateral damage. Remember, we've got collateral damage up here. So let's call up our collateral damage chart here. It says collateral damage. Now, airfield, airbase, attack helos. Now, let's see. We've attacked air bases. Airfields are gray and have a little prop plane on them. Attack helos, we didn't attack any attack helos. So we're on an air. So we've attacked air bases. We're going to roll on this column. It's not a hardened air base, and we didn't destroy it with a nuclear strike. So no modifiers apply. We're going to roll the die. We rolled a 5. We're going to read over to the strike value that we've accumulated. That's a blank. So there's no collateral damage. But you can see that there are 3 possible results. Air with an asterisk, air, and an air mobile point. So air, right, we can read our results. Owning player chooses 1 step loss from any air unit of the basing box. So if we had gotten that, the Russian player would choose to take a step loss from one of the planes, excuse me, based in Russia. So an air asterisk, the NATO player would get to choose which one it is. And if you get air mobile point, you lose an air mobile point. We don't have air mobile points in this game. That's how you move units with air. That's how you move ground units by helicopter. So we would have blown up some cargo helicopters. They're represented as an abstract number on the track. Okay, so we resolved our collateral damage. We are going to delete this, and we're going to replace that with just a regular strike 2 marker because we have no collateral damage. We put a strike 2 marker there. Okay, cool. Let's go back to our sequence of play. All right, we've done the strike phase. No aerial mining missions. We're not doing the supply phase. We would do now the initiative, movement, and combat phase. Don't need to do that. After that comes the second strike phase, so we could launch additional strikes. We've used all of our airplanes, but if we had held some back, we could strike again. Second supply phase, nope, not doing that. Basic movement and combat phase, nothing to do there. Isolation and surrender phase, okay. Reorganization phase. Rotate all helicopters, don't have any. Return all air units in the air superiority box to the ready box. So these guys go back to the ready box. They're feeling better, right? We're going to be able to use those next game turn. Let's see, move all air units in the flown box to the ready box. So we do that here. These guys are in the flown box, so now they go to the ready box. Move air units to the ready box. Let's see. Air units may be rebased. We're not going to do that. Okay. Roll for availability of units in the recovery aborted box. So these guys are in the aborted box, and you'll see these arrows with some numbers next to them. This case says 1 to 9 flown, 0 ready. So we have to roll for all the airplanes in that box. If we roll a 0, they go to the ready. If not, they just go to the flown.
So we'll start with the advanced. We'll start with the advanced flanker. That is a 4. It is not going to go to the ready. We have me clicking the wrong button. All right, we've got the regular flanker. Nope, not a 0. And then we've got the damaged fulcrum over there. He rolls a 2. So these guys all go to the flown box. Meaning, next turn, they're not really available. There's nothing to do with them. They are recovering from being aborted. Out. So, Grandpa Buff's here in the recovery box. Now we can see here, right, 0 to 2 is ready. 3 to 9 is flown, so we're going to roll for him. And he rolled a 4, so that's going to put him in the flown box. He won't fly next turn either. He is making a very, very long turn. Didn't quite make it in. Okay, so we've done all of our recovery. Special forces markers, no. Air mobiles, no. Tunnel markers, no. Clearing operations, no. Hex control station, no. Chemical support markers, no. All detection markers, no. Rotate, no. All right, remove all interdiction strike and remove all strike 1 markers. Right, so stuff gets repaired. This guy's no longer a strike 1. So we're going to delete that. And then we come up here, and this guy becomes a strike 1. Strike 1. And that's going to be it for the turn, right? So we would go to the next turn. Now remember, right, the effect of these strike, and actually this guy's strike 1 marker also gets repaired. So the headquarters is better now. Okay, so remember, right, this means that the Russians would have to pick one of these guys and put him in the flown box at the start of the next air superiority phase. NATO had to do that last turn. They don't have to do that this turn. Okay, so that explains how to do a turn. I've demonstrated several portions of this. I think I've hit all of the big rules and many of the caveats, many of the tricks. There might be small little things out there that you will run into as you go along. But if you follow along with this, if you've looked at the charts, if you've listened to the video, this should get you along. So remember 2 things. 1, Gary's a real human being just like you and me. If you know what that means, you're probably as terrified as I am by that statement. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. And also, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. See you soon.